Perfect. Okay. Well, it's getting to the top of the hour, and I think it's about time to kick things off. What do you think, gang?
Yeah, I am ready.
Oh,
I,
Do you want a little bit more excitement? It's 9 a.m.
I
here.
was expecting a little bit more. I
I'm
was
on West
just,
Coast time, so I'm still waking up.
yeah, we had a bunch of coffee this morning, or kafefe. We had a bunch of kafefe.
Ooh.
I just want to start off by welcoming everyone who is joining Moxie Live today. And I am your host, Johnny Lumens, hosting live from my parents' basement. We are super grateful to have Derek from FlexaLighting here. He will be joining us later on in the show to talk about some really cool things coming from FlexaLighting. But first off, I want to introduce a new member to our Moxie team, Whitley, who is our marketing master. It is because of her that our Instagram is way more lit than normal and will continue to be so. We also have another new member of the Moxie team, Josh, who joined us a couple months ago. He will be working with myself and Elaine, the last millennial cook, in spec sales in the city. Before we dive into the episode, I want to update all of our dedicated listeners on some changes to Moxie Live. We will not be doing Moxie Live every Friday at noon. We'll be doing it every other Friday at noon. This will allow us to present you better content consistently. So we go live on September 18th with Barbican. We'll be sitting down with their CEO to talk about some new products. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to dive into State of the Stuff for a 5-minute speed update on what some of our manufacturers have been up to. Whitley, I'm gonna pass it on to you to chat about our manufacturers.
thanks, Johnny Lumen. First off, I'd like to say hello or bonjour to everyone joining us today. I'm very excited to be part of my first Moxie Live. I hope everyone has a good last stretch of their summer as fall comes right around the corner. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the audience to Sternberg's Lunera series. If you could allow me to share my screen. I think I can actually. I don't need your help.
I'm pretty sure you're the host, so you could do anything you wanted to.
Okay, so they can see my screen?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so as I said, I'd like to introduce the audience to Sternberg's Lunera series. I remember seeing this series back in development in September of 2018. So I'm happy to showcase this series of dual crescent shaped fixtures suitable for contemporary urban projects. It has an elegant design as a post top, bollard, and sconce. So you have your pick. And sorry, I should have went through. Here are some application photos. Enolis's arc source in-ground can be remotely tilted from your computer. That's right, remotely. Goodbye are the days of taking apart your in-ground, having a specialized tool in order to adjust the beam placement, and potentially damaging your fixture while putting it all back together. With an IP rating of 68 and the option to DMX and RDM or wireless control, it'd be foolish to pass this in-ground up. You might have seen these bad boys on our social media pages. So if you're interested in more in-depth information about each project featured today, feel free to check out our Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. All right, well, that's my 5 minutes. Take it away, Johnny Lumen.
Fantastic stuff. Thanks, Whitley, on those updates. I'm glad someone has been working at home effectively. And now on to our main event, the star of the show, the light of our life, Derek Sousa from FlexaLighting, coming all the way from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Derek, I will pass it on to you. And Whitley, if you stop sharing your screen, that would be fantastic.
Gotcha.
I love how, like, as soon as it's time for me to talk, the lawnmower outside my building just starts to go off. It's like, that's always the perfect timing with me in Zoom. There's either, someone screaming outside my window or landscaping, but we'll make it work. thanks for having me on this week as, you know, your featured manufacturer. So I am the Vice President of Sales for North America in, well, with FlexaLighting. We are a global company. I'm just going to share my screen here and pull up my good old presentation. Just bear with me. We'll start the slideshow. Hopefully y'all can see it. But the company was founded in 2010 out of Florence, Italy. Some of you attending this webinar right now might be familiar with us, but if not, it's you know, one of those things where we're relatively new to the market. So we're still spreading the word. But really what we're known for is very small luminaires. You know, things that can really perform but can fit in the palm of your hand. Things that just really enhance architecture rather than detract from it. And the other critical thing that makes us very, I don't know, specifiable, I guess, in North America is that the designs are all from Italy. So it's got this very sleek, sophisticated, gorgeous kind of aesthetic to it that just really blends into nicely designed spaces. But we fabricate for North America here in Vancouver, Canada, hence my, you know, jersey to represent over here. But with Vancouver, it's actually got a really great lighting story. We have MP Lighting, Lead-A-Light, FlexaLighting, Lightheaded, Moxie, and Light. So there's a multitude of different lighting manufacturers here, and there's a lot in the manufacturing development that is very familiar with the lighting industry. So we have, you know, a lot of artisans and metal fabricators and paint houses that we work with to really create exactly what Italy's intended manufacturing process is for global for the global market. So we've actually fine-tuned things here that make it even more of a resource for North America. We have a multitude of housing options. We have Title 24 JA compliancy for California. We can do custom REL powder coat finishes. We've even modified the LEDs so that we have a dim to warm option in North America, which funny enough, I've just realized is actually not available for the rest of the global market. So that, you know, is a bit of a bonus for us here. And we do everything with the 98 CRI in our 6 watt and our 10 watt series. So that's like our 600 lumen package and our 1000 lumen package. And all of our other options are 93 CRI. So that's something that was critical for us to get into high-end residential as well as hospitality projects. So we really have that great color story. And the full gamut of the product offering is shown here. We do it all. We do downlights, surface mounts, track lighting, linear systems, step lighting, in-grounds, projectors, and bollards. So taking in indoor applications as well as outdoor applications for a complete series. And it's all Italian design, but made in Canada. You know, so that's definitely a benefit to have that local communication as well as that design story. So like I said, we're really known for small apertures. So you'll see us kind of start this product family with the Bi being the flange, Zerino being our trimless option, you know, more of an accent light at 81 lumens, but you have an aperture of less than 1 inch. But when we go into our Zero series, we take that similar form factor and now still going into that 1 inch zone with the aperture size, but now you have 600 lumens. So this gives you a multitude of opportunities to really discreetly do uniform downlighting, but also just, you know, with such a small form factor, you can group, cluster, do some fun visual things with your lighting plan in your ceiling versus just, you know, peppering a space with a grid. You can actually like do focal points and create some clusters. So something like this application photo where you have the 4 somewhat anchoring the furniture and then you know, it going alongside that nice cove detail. And the trim list is pretty straightforward for drywall. You would either have an IC housing or a base plate that goes behind the drywall. That gets, you know, drywall put up ahead, in front of the housing. Then you just cut out to the hole dimension, making sure that that hole cutout is nice and clean. We don't have really large flange details. That's more so for the non-trimless. But with the trimless, you then have as step 2, this nice collar that just nails onto the front side of the drywall and it plasters in. And if we go back to the product here, you'll see this nice little notch on the side. So it's just a twist and lock into the ceiling. But one thing I really wanted to highlight, so there you have a silver ceiling with a square. But I wanted to highlight, us being able to modify with all of these different design challenges that come to us. So we're working on a project. It's actually me and Matt from Moxie. We're working on a project that requires our zero into a wood trimless ceiling. So what you would do is you have this collar that gets nailed onto the back side of whatever ceiling substrate you're using. So it could be stone, it could be wood, it could be fabric. So that goes onto the back side. Then you have this collar that screws in, and it allows you to screw into the dimension of that thickness so that that trimless luminaire sits flush. So really great details that we've had in the past that we did were this one in a leather ceiling. This is a stone trimless option. And then you have some, square wood options here. So just, and then we round out the offering with our flanged offering with, again, the 600 lumen and the 1000 lumen. But it gives you a nice, robust, options with any of your downlighting that you're trying to do and in any kind of ceiling variety. But what I really want to highlight is the new direction that we're going into. We feel that our line does really complete downlighting quite well. So the Maggie system here is something that's really taken off for us. It's this really nice trimless, recessed, linear housing system. The housing system is actually not electrified. So by doing that, by reducing any of the electrical components required in the housing, you can actually do longer stretches and maintain more of a competitive budget. So we have two profiles, the 36, which is 36 millimeters, and 72, which is 72 millimeters. So really that's an 1.5 inches as well as a 3-inch profile. And then you have these knockouts in the housing where you would have your remote driver have its low voltage wiring feed to those knockouts. And that would then allocate zones that you can power these luminaires on the right-hand side that you see there. So you have the Leonard, which is an adjustable head that kind of stays inside of that ceiling plane. The David 36, which is just your fixed downwards light. The Prince 36, which sits proud outside of the ceiling plane, so you can really angle and aim where you need that light to be focused on, as well as the Ben, which is a nice luminous type of linear so that it can break up any of that spotlighting or that downlighting. The housings come in an L shape if you're doing corner bends. We now have a T shape available if you're doing, like a joint in the center of a linear run. We have an end cap. Usually there's 2 per linear run. And then you have that middle piece that is a 1 foot, 2 foot, 4 foot, or 6 foot standard. So really functional, lots of versatility with this product. We can do 0 to 10 volts, which dims down to 0.1%, or an ELV driver that dims to 10%. There's also Lutron and Dolly options available should your control system require that type of dimming capability. Then we have the 72. So you go from something that is about 1,000 lumen package with the Maggie 36 into now more of a robust looking fixture style that can do 1,800 lumens. And again, the names are, there's a lot of names in our line. But the Leonard, the David, Prince, those are all musicians who passed away in the last decade, I would say, and a bit of homage. I don't know who Ben is, but one day I'll ask Roberto, the designer of the product, where that inspiration came from. But we have a nice installation video of how this is all done. This is just a nice little drawing detail, but you would frame the dimensions of the system that's going into place. Then you nail in the housings into the drywall. There's this gauge that we supply that ensures everything's aligned correctly. Then you tape in mud, and then you have your nice little sleek slot that's visible only, and then your fixtures can feed in. And this was actually our first application that we did for North America. Our housing differs than the global version. So this was a redesigned, re-engineered housing that we now have available today. And this was the first run. And we were quite thrilled with how it came out, and just the perfect application for showcasing our product. And they only went with the David 36 because they liked the linear effect, but really just wanted a downlight component to the space. And that brings me to our brand new Octo ceiling and suspended series. This is not officially launched, so I'm doing this as a bit of a, bonus for anyone joining in live today. This is something that we want to really start to ramp up some excitement over. And as you saw from Whitley's earlier display, there's a few manufacturers who are going in this route, but we really feel like it's a nice design aesthetic that fits what we're doing with our lighting options as well. So it's a 24-volt DC multifunctional modular system. We will be doing runs of 4 feet and 8 feet, and then you have these options of joining, in an L shape or T shape, or even doing an X shape, and then building from there. The dimensions you see here are still the metric. So I think 40 is like about an inch in width. So, this will change slightly. We're still in engineering phase, but I just really was excited to kind of showcase this already, because we have some beautiful installations from Italy showcasing the product really nicely. So we have a pendant version. That's one thing that with our previous Maggie series I just showed earlier, that, it was like, oh, we can recess this system in the ceiling. Can we do a pendant version? So that will probably come from the Maggie in a few more, maybe like the end of next year. But with Octo, we are already there. So you have these really cool luminaires that then just magnetically clip in. So the Joss is, something that looks like a stick that sits out of the ceiling. But once you angle it, it does have this really cool asymmetric type of aesthetic to it. And there's a nice little chrome detail where the head meets the stem for just some visual interest. Then you have the LAD, which is a bit of a fatter monopoint. So just, whatever type of lighting design or decorative feel you need for the space, those two options are really great to fit into the system. But then the LAD also has a wall wash with that capped metal canister design that you have on the end of the head. LEV is a nice grazer that just slots in. So again, some pretty cool beam distributions that we can do with the LEV, 10 degree, 25 degree, and 40. And we try to keep it all relatively similar with the other monopoints as well, so that there is some consistency with bridging those families together. And not to just stay in linear lighting, but we want to have a lot of cohesion now with our line. You can do those Joss heads as a ceiling mount or as a wall sconce version. You see the LAD there as a wall option, and then you have the nice LEV grazer just as a surface mount in the ceiling. So really trying to create a lot of symmetry with the light that we now create with our line, and just having, multifunctional pieces that can bridge into a lot of different areas with your lighting design. So that's it from me. That's what we do well, what we do pretty consistently. I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen here so you don't see my ugly desktop that showcases everything. But yeah, so I will hand it over to
me, Johnny Lumens.
All right, Johnny Lumens. There we go.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing both the Maggie and the Octo. If I had an apartment, I would totally put the Octo in there, but currently I'm a little bit homeless.
Well, you're my first request for Octo, so.
No, I'm really excited. I really like it. I've loved the Maggie for quite some time, so I'm really excited for the Octo to come out. We're going to take a little bit of a break from the lighting segment and move over to our COVID covers segment, where we share the team's current COVID reads and watches. So to kick it off, I'm going to showcase a book that I don't have in physical form because I'm an audiobook listener. I find by the time the night comes around, my eyes are just so dead from doing work. So I don't know if you can see that. That's what the title block looks like. It is called The Fifth Season. And It's a sci-fi book. That's usually all I read. And it's about an Earth-like world that actually goes into a fifth season where it basically threatens the survival of the human race. It happens every so often and can last for like years on end or a couple of months. And it follows three orogenes, which are magical people, throughout their experience with this fifth season. That's all I can really say about it, because anything more I will give basically the entire book away. And then my watch pick is The Princess Bride. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. It's a classic movie. It was made like late, like 1980s or I don't know, somewhere around there. It's one of my dad's favorite movies too. So for all the gentlemen out there that think it's just another princess movie, it is not. It's a great movie. I'm going to pass it over to Whitley to talk about her COVID covers.
Okay, so on one of my morning jogs, I ran across a box of free books, and I actually finished one. It's called Landscape Without Gravity by Barbara Osher. So this is a memoir on Barbara's own experience with grief after her younger brother has died shortly after being diagnosed with AIDS. Definitely the height of the AIDS epidemic in the 80s. We kind of go through her own hero's journey throughout her mourning process. It's a good read for anybody has gone through grief, going through grief, and it doesn't necessarily need to be someone's death to ignite that. On a lighter note, as for movies, my recommendation is 2019's award-winning thriller comedy Parasite by Bong Joon-ho. Let me tell you, my job was on the floor on the later half of the film. It's so good. If you enjoy Jordan Peele's Get Out, you'll like this one. It provides a biting commentary about greed and class discrimination within South Korea. Do you have any good watches or reads that you recommend, Derek?
Well, funny, I loved Parasite. I thought that was the best movie that came out. Was that this year? I can't even.
2019. So last year.
Yeah, so it was this year's Oscars, I think it won.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
It feels like 2 years ago already. Time is such a weird thing. But yeah, I loved it too. I thought it was the best. And yeah, it just totally takes a different spin. And that's all I'll say. But yeah, what you think is happening, it will just totally turn you on your head. What I'm reading right now is called A Little Life. This was given to me by a friend of mine, and it turns out it's quite a popular read. I'm sadly only 37 pages in. So what my take is on it, that it's a group of guys who have all kind of finished school together. They live in New York, and it's just, 4 to 5 gentlemen who all come from very different backgrounds. And I think there's a lot of childhood trauma that starts to come into play, but I haven't gotten that far. And I don't know when I'm going to start to read it again, because I now have to read the IES handbook for this exam that I'm taking to get my LC in November. So that will probably be most of my reading. But my favorite watches that I've had during pandemic, there were like a few shows that I really wanted. Like I really wanted to get into Fleabag and Succession, and I actually was like totally, I don't know, they didn't build me up the way that I thought they would. But the two shows that I absolutely adored was Insecure. I had always heard about it, and actually I had an ex who really loved it, and I probably didn't watch it because he loved it so much. And then, so I love that. And then I finally watched Veep, and everyone has been telling me that I would love Veep if I kind of got into it, and I don't know why, I just never did. And then I finally watched it, and it's a little jarring, because what's supposed to be satire near the end seasons is essentially commenting on reality. So, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus is she's such an icon. So yeah, so that's what's gotten me through pandemic.
Oh, that is so, I love that show. I watched it, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I don't think I've hit the later series or seasons, but no, it is so good.
It's just so nuanced. It's just incredible. Like,
yeah.
her performance.
Oh No, I need to rewatch it. I'll put that back on my list to dive into again because it's so good. I need to finish it. But that's it for the COVID covers. We're going to move on to the Q&A portion of Moxie Live. I have prepared some questions along with Whitley that we're going to ask you, Derek, and then we're going to take it for a bit more of a general Q&A because I have some more questions that weren't prepared that I got during
the
presentation. So the first one is, Derek, what has been your favorite project in your career?
It's funny because like with preparing this, I totally drew a blank, and I don't know if I'm just like I was questioning like, do I love what I do? Because I don't remember any projects really being something that's been like, oh my God, that was a true like experience. But I don't know. The two kind of finally bubbled to the surface, and I guess the first one would be Lululemon's head office, and I know that's kind of a big deal. But it was a big deal because I had just gotten into the sales side of lighting, and I was working with this construction management company that also had an interior design group, and pretty much like it was a bit chaotic at this company. And then it just turned out that it was this one designer who ended up getting all the projects, and she was just so like under a deadline with everything that she wrote me into this project and said, I need a really nice 2x2 that goes into a grid ceiling that is going to be budget sensitive, but something that also looks nice in the space. And I guess that's kind of like what we get asked day in, day out. But I ended up finding something that was nice, would kind of stand the test of time because they weren't really going to move away from this office for probably another decade. And it wasn't something that, they just wanted as a quick solution, but they knew that in the future they weren't going to just stay in this office. So so it ended up being like a good $150,000 job that I worked on as like my first foray into a major lighting project. And then the next one that came to mind, this was now like 5 years later. I worked on the Edmonton Oilers Rogers Arena, or Rogers Place, I think is what it's called. That was pretty exciting to be on. And it was one of those things where projects are so large that you just don't even understand where your lighting is going into. You get these counts and these types. And then when you see the photography of how it all came together, you're just like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And hopefully one day, I've seen it from the outside. It's a very cool building. Like if you just were to Google it, it's actually this silver, very organically shaped droplet. It's supposed to represent a drop of oil. So it's definitely a showpiece in the Edmonton skyline, which doesn't really mean much, but honestly, the building itself is pretty incredible. And they're actually creating a whole district around it where the architecture will then add to a skyline that will finally look pretty amazing. Yeah, so there you go.
Awesome.
That sounds great. So we've all gone through this. What has been your toughest challenge during COVID-19, Derek?
I would say I'm kind of a fitness buff, so I love going to the gym. It's my way to de-stress. And funny enough, my gym actually went bankrupt just as the pandemic was starting. So it shut down for like a totally different reason. And Vancouver did pretty well with keeping numbers low. So gyms opened, I think, in phase 2 back in probably July or June. But my gym didn't. My gym was still getting repurchased by other investors or whatever. So I started to do all my workouts outside. And what that happened to be was just running the seawall on concrete, totally blew my my left knee. It swelled for like until like a week ago. So that was probably Canada Day, which is like July 1st. It's only been recovering like in the last week. And this is after physio and doctor's appointments and a lot of Tylenol. So that's been the biggest challenge, is just kind of seeing, being idle and trying to be healthy, but just knowing that does impact you and how much it impacts your mental health too. So yeah. And the home workouts, I don't know, they're not fun.
No, it's been really hard not to like be at a gym and do like the group workouts and get scheduled. Like for my gym, you had to like book which workouts you were gonna go to, and then it like kept you accountable to like actually show up. So I totally feel that. I'm moving on to the next question. Derek, what has been the weirdest / funniest thing that has happened to you in the lighting industry over your career?
So it's funny, like I couldn't think of a project specifically that I could jump on, but like I have a scenario in lighting that is hilarious and it's like the first go-to story I have. So I have this lighting designer. She's really like energetic. As soon as like I open the door, she works at a home space. So as soon as I open the door, her dogs are all over me and she's telling me like, "Do you want some champagne? I have such a day." She'll just launch right into like all her design scenarios or a construction screw up or something or a crazy client. So we're chatting up in her office and I'm, putting in my catalogs, updating what I had brought to her before. And she's just, going on. And then all of a sudden I'm just hearing like creaking and cracking. And I'm like, where are you coming from? And I'm like, oh, maybe it's just like, the catalogs rearranging or whatever. And all of a sudden, the whole shelving unit, this thing was like, I would say an 8-foot wall, and the whole thing was a shelf. It just started to slowly move forward. And then she started to know what was happening. And I had no idea. I was like, what is going on? Is this an earthquake? And then the whole shelf just falls on top of me. And all the books, all of her tile samples, her catalogs, like carpet swatches, it just all crashes down. And there's this huge island that she had in the middle of the room to just look at plans that caught the shelf from completely falling on me. And all I just remember in that whole moment is her jumping out of her chair being like, "Watch out!" And moment of shock for her, but I thought it was like the most hilarious thing. But then she was just
the catalogs could kill.
But then she was just looking at the pile of everything that she had organized, just sitting on the floor, and she was just so defeated and was like, I guess you can go. But now she brings it up and like we laugh about it all the time. I actually like strung up her Christmas lights this past winter. So that's the kind of relationship her and I have, and the kind of relationship I have with my designers.
Not only will we give you great lights, but we will also help you hang your lights at your home.
Take advantage of my 6'2" height.
That's Flex's new tagline.
That's wonderful. So, to wrap up this episode of Moxie Live, will you share something with us that no one knows about FlexaLighting?
Sure. The one thing that stands out pretty quickly is the naming. Like we have, like I said earlier, we have like the Prince, David for David Bowie, and then we have things like Lauren, which is after Sophia Loren. We have an in-ground called the Jenna. And people already like clue in, oh, I know who that's named after. So that's named after porn actress Jenna Jameson. So, so Roberto finds inspiration everywhere with his products. But we have a whole outdoor series that's called like Mahalo, Aloha. So that's all. Roberto is obsessed with Hawaii. It's his favorite go-to destination. So all of our like luminaires in the outdoor landscape option are named after Hawaiian influences. So yeah, so whenever you see a name, maybe just kind of see like if you can guess where that's based off of. We have a Kirsten, so that's named after Kirsten Dunst. So yeah, there's it's kind of a fun thing. It's hard to memorize. That's the one thing I've told them. I'm like, you need to kind of lay off all the different names. But once you start to learn them, they just embed in your brain. But yeah, I would say that's kind of the one thing people may not know.
No, that's cool. Fun fact. I always wondered why there were such weird fixture names, but I find it's nice to have something that kind of goes across the entire scope of the manufacturer, because some manufacturers just kind of pull names left, right, and center. So it's nice that yours has like a continuity between all of them.
Yeah, and I think when you look at our marketing, it's so architectural that it's fun when you find these little nuances of playfulness. And I think like at the end of the day, my team in Italy, they're artists. They're not just people who engineer product. So you start to see that embed. We have quotes from Shakespeare in the catalog. We have like T-shirts with that same quote from, I think it's Macbeth. And it has no relation to lighting. And I asked Roberto, and he just said it's a quote in Macbeth where he finds the bones of his former jester who used to make him laugh as a kid before he became king. And it's this like sadness of like, oh, what my life was before. And to Roberto, it was like a comment on where his headspace was to design the full catalog before Euroluce took place in Milan. So little weird isms like that.
That is so cool.
That's really cool.
Oh, I did not notice that. I'm gonna go read through the catalog again just to see.
Oh, absolutely.
It's in Latin, but yeah.
I actually have a question for you about the Maggie and the Octo series. I know the Octo series does have a wall wash. Does the Maggie have a wall wash for the system?
Not. No. One thing we could do is an elliptical beam spread. So if you're doing like a linear pattern, that's something that we could do. Okay. So, but how that would frame onto a wall if you were like putting it into the Leonard, I'm not exactly sure. You might just get some linear line. But if you had maybe like a tall portrait, that could be something that would work based on the positioning. But as far as like an exact wall wash type of optic, nothing for the Maggie.
Nothing for the Maggie, because I really like the Octo one. I was going through the spec, not the spec sheets, but you sent over like a little PDF, and the Octo one was really nice.
Yeah, this other series that we're designing, I think that's what I sent you. So it's this other series called our LVT. It's actually what I was going to showcase, but then production here in Vancouver told me like, don't promote it just yet. We're still retooling it. And one of those fixtures, we can just modify the foot on it. It looks like the lad with that wall wash, but it's not. It's something that looks a little bit more like, I would say, our Prince with that cap on the end to do a wall wash effect. So we can always pull that and put that into the Maggie quite easily. And thanks for jogging my memory again. that was a solution I told you about. But yeah, that's something we can do.
And also I had a question for the Maggie system. Can it go directly butt against a wall, or does it have to have the gap beside it?
There is a bit of a gap because on the housing itself, you have these two flanges that are perforated, and that's to catch and pull away the mud. So I think that's about a 2-inch detail. Yeah. So you'll need at least that much width off of the walls to do it.
That's not bad at all. Yeah, no, awesome. Whitley, do you have any questions?
No, I'm all done for the day.
She's ready to back up. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Well, then let me continue on to the next segment. We're just wanting to thank everyone for tuning in and having, wow, sorry, that was not English. Thank you everyone for coming into Moxie Live this week. We'll just cut that right out. And I do have to come clean on some things. I am not Johnny Lumens. I know you're probably like pretty floored away. I'm actually Elaine, the last millennial cook. Johnny is on a well-deserved vacation somewhere in either California or mid-US. We're not quite sure. We'll probably send out a missing persons report in a couple of days if we don't hear anything back. But that feels great to get off my chest. So finally, before we end, we'd like to remind our audience that this will all be live on our Instagram as well as our YouTube channel for sharing or viewing again at a later date. And the next Moxie Live will not be next weekend or next week. It'll be the week after on the 18th at noon, where we'll be going back to Canada, not only for their free healthcare and pumpkins, but to interview Andrew Cook at Barbican on some of their new fixtures. So thank you everyone for tuning in and have a great long weekend. That's it.
Have a good Labor Day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.